The National Desk, America's News Now.
The first of the Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners have been released in a highly anticipated deal. What happens next with a ceasefire now underway? Then, if you've been driving recently, you may have noticed a change in the cost of a tank of gas. Who should get credit for that or blame, depending on what you're paying? Then, the storm system that could disrupt travel for the millions of people returning home after Thanksgiving. As we come on the air, 24 hostages held captive by Hamas are back in Israel. At least 13 of them Israeli, now reuniting with their families. And you can see here right on my left-hand side, a bus going into Israel from Gaza. That's the moment they re-entered the country. And here's what we know about who has been released. 13 of those freed, 13 of them are Israeli citizens, including 5 women in their 70s, an 85-year-old, and 4 children ages 2 through 9. The Hostages and Missing Persons Families Forum says many of the hostages seem to have been taken from the same kibbutz. Also released, 10 Thai citizens and 1 Filipino citizen. President Biden speaking today.
Today has been a product of a lot of hard work and weeks of personal engagement. From the moment Hamas kidnapped these people, I, along with my team, have worked around the clock to secure their release.
Now, noticeably absent in this deal, in the grouping that was released today, Americans. At least 3 Americans were reported to be part of the greater hostage deal. None, however, were in this first group released, including 3-year-old Israeli-American Abigail Edan. Also part of this highly anticipated hostage deal, 39 Palestinian prisoners have been released, 17 of them minors under the age of 18. This as the first day of a 4-day ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict comes to a close. Over the next 3 days, we are expecting another 26 hostages and more than 100 additional Palestinian prisoners to be freed. We're also expecting more aid. The deal includes additional fuel and supply shipments into Gaza. CNN reports at least 7 fuel trucks have entered the area through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt today, along with several aid trucks. Israel is allowing around 34,000 gallons of fuel a day into Gaza during the ceasefire, which still will not be enough for the millions of Palestinians there. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the country will press on with its military campaign after the ceasefire ends. But as the humanitarian crisis worsens in the Gaza Strip and more aid begins to flood into Gaza, some fear the additional resources won't make it to the Palestinian people and instead go to Hamas. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, she joins us from Washington with a look at where Hamas is getting its funding.
Targeting Hamas's finances to cripple their terror activity is easier said than done.
They've also played or gamed the system so well that they have amassed this wealth and have been fairly successful in doing so.
Over the decades, Hamas evading a slew of international efforts and sanctions to empty their coffers, developing a complex, multi-pronged, extremely lucrative revenue system that's consistently placed them on Forbes' list of the richest terror organizations in the world, only behind Hezbollah and the Taliban, ahead of al-Qaeda and ISIS. According to the U.S. Treasury, Iran gives Hamas between $100 million and $300 million per year. Hamas also heavily taxes Gazans, at least $300 million a year before the current war. Then there's money from criminal activity and from charities. Billions of dollars in humanitarian aid siphoned off by Hamas over the years.
Terrorist groups are the ultimate black box. I mean, we have no idea what they're spending their money on.
Bruce Hoffman, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, says one look at the extreme poverty in Gaza shows most of this money never makes it to the Palestinian people.
Hamas's military budget is annually estimated to be somewhere between $100 and $350 million. I mean, that's where the money's going.
Additional funds appear to have made top Hamas officials billionaires. According to the Israeli government, the top 3 men, now worth a combined $11 billion, living in lavish luxury in Qatar.
there's obviously ample amounts left over that goes to line individuals' pockets.
As some try to blame Israel and Egypt's blockade for the extreme poverty and suffering in Gaza, Hoffman and other experts argue blame for the dire economic conditions lies squarely with their government, Hamas. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
And tonight, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo denying sexual harassment claims yet again. A former aide claims in a new filing that she was harassed by Cuomo while he was still in office. A similar charge against Cuomo stemming from these allegations was dismissed last year. It comes as the New York Adult Survivors Act has just expired. The law had allowed alleged victims to sue after the statutes of limitations had ended. And double amputee Olympic runner Oscar Pistorius, he is going to be let out of prison. This just in today. Pistorius was granted parole in South Africa. He was sentenced to over 13 years in prison after he shot and killed model Reva Steenkamp at his home in South Africa back in 2013. The two were dating at the time. Pistorius claimed that he mistook her for a burglar. He is set to be released in January. Well, we now know the identities of the two people killed in a car explosion at the U.S.-Canada border on Wednesday, Kurt and Monica Villani, a married couple from Grand Island, New York, both 53 years old, according to police. The pair owned multiple businesses in western New York. Investigators are still not sure what caused the crash, which initially prompted fears of a terrorist attack. Shoppers are now allowed back into New Jersey's American Dream Mall after it was closed for around 2 hours this morning, all because of a bomb threat. Police evacuated the mall after someone told them there was a bomb in the building. They later confirmed that no explosives were found, but they were still actively investigating the incident. If you're one of the millions of travelers behind the wheel for the holidays this year, well, you've likely noticed a change in how much it costs for you to fill up on gas. But who should get credit or blame for what you're shelling out at gas stations around the country? Chief political correspondent Scott Thuman takes a look.
As Americans are expected to hit the roads in record numbers this holiday season, they are also getting a small break here at the pump, where prices are $3.26 a gallon, down about 32 cents from a year ago. President Biden taking some credit for the cost drops.
Just in time for holiday travel, gas prices are down $1.70 from their peak. Airline tickets are down 13% over the last year, and car rentals are down about 10%.
However, are the accolades his to have?
Politicians aside, gas prices move because of economics, not who's in the White House, not solely focused on the United States. Oil is a global commodity, and it's wrong for politicians to blame politicians for economics, and it's wrong for politicians to get credit for economics.
Patrick DeHaan, analyst for Gas Buddy, says it's true the administration has cleared the way for more drilling as the war between Ukraine and Russia hurts supplies and Middle East countries cut production. So domestic production is way up to a record 13.2 million barrels a day, and oil production from federal lands and waters now higher than under the Trump administration. But President Biden doesn't talk much about that, knowing the far left of his party and some of his voting base would be disappointed.
He paraded into the White House under cracking down on oil production. We don't see the Biden administration exactly touting the fact that U.S. oil production is back at a record, simply because his agenda was championed on potentially ending fossil fuels, as he so eloquently put it.
Yet he says when it comes to driving the markets, it is still the global system and not just the White House behind the wheel. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
Well, as millions of Americans return home after Thanksgiving, return home from traveling from Thanksgiving, a storm currently moving across the country could cause some disruptions. The places most likely to be impacted. And there's a variety of reasons why your days might not be merry or bright around the holiday season. Coming up, what experts say you should be doing to keep your mind in a good space during a sometimes stressful time of year. And an Oklahoma shelter has been serving Thanksgiving meals all week, and some of the situations behind the hunger might take you by surprise. We'll be right back. Millions of people returning home after traveling for Thanksgiving, but a storm system could lead to extra traffic and flight disruptions. It has already been snowing in some areas in the Rockies and Plains, and the severe weather is expected to move further east by Sunday. In fact, TSA expecting to screen nearly 2.9 million passengers this Sunday. That would beat a record that we saw set back in June. Meantime, fulfilling a yearly tradition, right now Americans flooding shopping malls for Black Friday, stores offering big discounts and other perks to attract customers sticking to tighter budgets this year. Shoppers are expected to spend more this year than last year overall, but at a slower pace, according to the National Retail Federation. And the holiday season, it can be joyful, but also very stressful for millions of Americans who are juggling family obligations and holiday expenses. National correspondent Angela Brown talks to experts about ways you can mitigate stress during the holidays.
Home for the holidays and interacting with your family can be stressful, especially for young college students facing a variety of issues.
We receive a lot of calls from them when they go back home and let's say they're being misgendered.
Dr. Tia Dole is the Chief 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline Officer at Vibrant Emotional Health. She says people in crisis call 988 from closets, bathrooms.
When you're around family members who are challenging, figuring out where you can have a safe space is key.
The American Psychological Association says 38% of people say the holidays cause more stress, depression, anxiety, conflict that often boils over at the dinner table. Therapist Joyce Gardner has this advice.
It may not be the perfect meal you planned, or you might not expect everybody to have things come up at the last minute where they can't be there, but accept and give yourself grace.
Experts recommend having a plan in place, including people to call and resources for help if you feel like you're in crisis.
I'm feeling this way. How escalated? Do I need to call 988 or do I need to call my clinician or do I need to call my pastor? What can I do here to connect with other people?
Holiday stress extends into the new year. A recent report said that 33% of Americans are stressed out about gaining weight during the holiday season. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Angela, thank you. A third woman is now accusing rapper Sean Diddy Combs of sexual assault. The new lawsuit claims he and musician Aaron Hall raped the woman and her friend back in 1990 or 1991. A spokesperson for Combs has denied the allegations, calling them a money grab. It comes after two other sexual assault lawsuits were filed against Combs this month. One was already settled. As billions of dollars in opioid settlement money flow to states across the country, Spotlight on America is continuing its in-depth look at transparency over how that money is being spent. As national investigative correspondent Angie Moreski tells us, a mother who lost her son to an opioid overdose wants a seat at the table and is calling for more accountability.
There you go.
8-year-old Ava is the joy of her grandma Jackie Lewis's life.
Good job.
She's now raising the little girl, but spending so many precious moments together came at a very high cost.
It breaks my heart to watch her have to grow up without her daddy.
Jackie's son, Sean, lost his 20-year battle with opioid addiction 1 year ago, dying in her arms.
I heard a breath come out, and I thought, oh, he's going to be okay. But as it turned out, that was actually his last breath.
As a family member who endured that pain, she wants her voice heard.
Did you have high hopes for this settlement money?
Absolutely, I did. This would not exist for anyone if it wasn't for the people that have lost their lives already.
She believes a portion of the more than $1 billion Ohio has received should go to help families who've lost loved ones.
For these little children possibly to have a more secure future, maybe with their education.
Ohio created a nonprofit corporation called the One Ohio Recovery Foundation to distribute more than half of the settlement money.
We left executive session at 1:28.
But when Jackie attended one of the first meetings, she says she got a rude awakening.
What happened when you tried to attend one of those first meetings for One Ohio?
They did not acknowledge any of us. There was not an opportunity to speak. They closed the meeting and moved it to an executive session outside of that room on a different floor and left all of us sitting there.
It never occurred to me that I wouldn't be allowed into the meeting.
Dennis Cushon, executive director of Harm Reduction Ohio, which works to help reduce overdose deaths, says he also was kept out of a meeting and was outraged.
The impacted population who we represent shouldn't have to fight to know what the government officials who control the board are doing.
After also being denied public records from the board, he fought back.
Our organization sued them and we won at the Ohio Supreme Court.
In a unanimous decision, the state Supreme Court rejected One Ohio's argument that it was not a public office and therefore not bound by the Public Records Act, calling the foundation the functional equivalent of a public office with a clear legal duty to provide access.
I want to welcome everybody to the meeting.
The foundation does now post its monthly meetings, minutes, and policies on its website and told Spotlight on America in a statement the board has enacted policies including public reporting of finances, transparency policies, grant policies outlining criteria and decision-making processes, and other essential governance practices.
They've had 50 secret committee meetings.
But Cushon says his transparency concerns continued because several committee meetings where important decisions were made were still closed.
What they're doing is they're spinning it to like they have a few select meetings that they have open and then they can boast about it. It's like how politicians see reality if they spin it.
In a stunning development this summer, just 1 month after the Ohio Supreme Court ruling, the state legislature passed a law that overrides the court's decision, shielding One Ohio from public scrutiny. A 2-page amendment was inserted into the 9,000-page budget bill, saying One Ohio is not a state entity and therefore exempt from public records laws.
Not only from public records in open meetings, but to exempt them from state law against bribery, state law that requires competitive bidding on contracts, and a whole bunch of stuff.
Asked for reaction to the new law, One Ohio's spokesperson told Spotlight on America, One Ohio is arguably the most transparent nonprofit in the state of Ohio and will continue to operate that way.
What was your reaction when the state legislature did that?
I felt defeated, angry. Well, it makes me wonder what else is going on there, quite honestly. That captured my son.
Meanwhile, Jackie is just trying to carry on without her son for her granddaughter.
Hi, Ava. How are you?
Good.
Jackie worries families like hers are being forgotten because she says no one who's lost a loved one is among the 29 members of the One Ohio board.
Allow the people, impacted families, to have a voice at the table of power.
What do you want me to know about what you've been through?
It's been hard.
Spotlight did request an interview with the new One Ohio executive director, but as of this recording, that has gone unanswered. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Angie, thank you. Coming up, doctors warn about increased heart attacks during the holidays. Tips from a cardiologist for lowering your risk. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America.
Paul Davies knows firsthand what goes into preparing those bountiful Thanksgiving meals at John 3:16.
I work in the morning time in the kitchen here. We help prepare. I've been working all week.
They started serving Thanksgiving meals on Tuesday, and by the looks of things outside, demand has remained strong.
There's a lot of people hungry, it looks like.
And behind some of that hunger, situations that might take you by surprise.
40 of the 200 beds we have here are reserved by folks that are homeless that have a job. And who would thought that that's the case?
On top of that, says CEO Stephen Whitaker, is the startling number of the newly homeless.
We had 100 during the month, 115, something like that, people that came to the mission had never been homeless before during just the month of October.
We just really want to give back and love on these people.
While the holidays are a time for fun and family and can often be merry, doctors say they can quickly turn into a scary situation with the holiday season interrupting our daily routine. So how can you lower your risk of developing holiday heart syndrome?
Making sure that you're staying compliant with your medications, don't skip your doses, staying healthy with your food choices, avoiding food that are high in sodium, so salty foods.
Alcohol is also considered a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease.
During the holiday season, people tend to indulge in higher amounts of alcohol consumption, and alcohol actually weakens the heart muscle, and it can cause people to go into heart failure.
And don't count out holiday stress.
People feel overwhelmed with lots of things to do, lots of things to plan, lots of emotions, lots of people, even overwhelmed with finances.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed around the holidays,
slow it down.
Package deliveries expected to skyrocket the next month as the holiday season hits high gear.
We have a key for each person, and you open it up.
Jason, who asked not to be identified for safety reasons, shows us a layer of security at his New Albany apartment complex that has special lock boxes for delivered packages. But Jason tells us the packages not always drop into the lock boxes after being delivered. He tells us since July, 4 packages he and his wife ordered to be delivered by the U.S. Postal Service have been stolen. 2 packages within the past 2 weeks.
They're just laid out so anybody can freely pick them up, take them, and that's what's been happening. We've had a high frequency of theft.
Jason says he's been trying to get the Postal Service to address the problem for months.
That was in July. Then it started up again just recently when I reached back out to them. They said they would get back with me.
But Jason tells us he has yet to get a response from the government.
Well, coming up here, a composer is restoring music written by prisoners at Auschwitz. So when it will be performed for the very first time when we come back. Music composed at Auschwitz will be played for the very first time next week after being painstakingly restored by a composer who found the collection at Auschwitz by accident back in 2015. Most concentration camps had some kind of orchestra where prisoners played whatever instruments were available to them. The composer has been reconstructing all the incompleted works he found, 210 of them, and 4 songs will be heard by the world next week. Very incredible. And that does it for this edition of the National Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories. Just check your local listings. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching and have a great weekend.